Anne Marie, take it.
Thank you, Christy. I hope everybody had a good lunch. And you know, as a therapist, we always have to incorporate practice what we preach a little bit, right? So I'm going to have you just sitting in your chair, put your feet on the floor, tall, take a deep, and are you doing this? I got my eyes closed. Okay. Take a deep breath in through your nose, and out through your mouth. Go try. Oh. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Go calves. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Go, but never mind. As Chrissy said, I'm a physical therapist and I work with the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. How great! You know, we had a lot of information this morning from the Department of Aging and StudyU, Bureau of Workers' Comp, vendors with a lot of combined experience, but probably the biggest thing, and it sounds dumb, but it's not dumb, is that you're here. And you're getting this information, and what the goal is to try to apply it to adults with developmental disabilities, a highly underserved group. True? People are aging, and so are people with disabilities aging. As the mandate to be out in the community has grown, it's also at a time when people's challenges have grown and our funding has decreased. So if you're like me, you feel like Christmas when you see all the equipment and you're very excited, but the thing in the back of your mind is, who's going to pay for it? I wish I could answer all those questions, but we'll try a little. To me, sometimes the most embarrassing part is, but how come I can't just get it? I need it today. So-and-so's moving into the house. They have waiver. We need it today. They need a shower today. They need to go to the bathroom today. And following the protocol of getting the waiver money and the approved and the quote, and then it's delivered, quite literally can take 3 months, 6 months. And that's the reality that you're facing. So we're trying to show options. We're trying to talk about some practical things. Some of it will be repeated. We worked kind of independently, and it was interesting. Every time they talked about something, I was like, okay, so we got that in our presentation too. Won't hurt to hear it, and it won't hurt to hear it applied to folks that you work with. In a big setting, it's hard to ask all the questions that are going through your mind. That's why we have Carol and Kevin here, County Board Classroom, within the day program, and drawing from their experience. But please don't hesitate. Some of it's going to have to happen one-on-one. You know, you recognize the face of somebody that you can call, and we'll follow up one-on-one. So the 4 goals, and hopefully I'll work this right to switch slides. 4 objectives, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about the research in exercise. If it was a pill and you could make money off of it, wouldn't you know that we would just take a pill for exercise? You and I are always challenged. Can you imagine if you're dependent on somebody to help you with that exercise and you may not feel real good and you don't really want to do it, so you say no, and that's okay, you don't have to. You know, we get into this whole cycle. So, I'm sorry. The second one is that matching the level of assistance needed to their abilities. So we meet our mandate of health and safety, but we're not overgoing their abilities and making them more dependent. My fear is, as we're being more and more careful about falling, that people don't live in a bubble. They gotta move, they gotta go. So it's a balance. And that we're gonna demonstrate the different equipment, and then hopefully we'll have time to facilitate a case study. We prepared 3. Hopefully maybe we'll get to 1. Incorporating, you know, examples that some of you may even kind of recognize. The names have been changed. The The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, you know, you think about blood pressure, weight, and all that. They have listed physical activity as a vital sign. So adults with disabilities are 3 times more likely to have heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and cancer than adults without disabilities. And what that says is that, you know, you may have had a congenital or something happened at birth, but as you age, you're also 3 times more likely to get a chronic illness. 1 in 2 of adults with disabilities get no aerobic exercise activity. And if you think about that, aerobic's hard because by definition, it means you have to have a heart rate that is elevated and sustained for a certain amount of time. And if you have cerebral palsy, it can be difficult. How many times can it go up and down? But we do have some equipment that can help with that. 82% of adults with disabilities are more likely to be physically active if their doctor recommended it. And I thought about this. You know why I think a little bit is if you have a doctor's order that so-and-so has to stand in the home so many times and then you document they did it or they didn't do it, aren't you much more likely to do it than if it's everybody needs to get up and move and it's not specified? So I wondered about that statement. So the Center for Disease Control, and 2008 was a long time ago, but it was the reference that I could find. They had the population as a whole and then individuals with disabilities as part of that. But for adults in general, and again, we take this information for ourselves, all adults should move and avoid inactivity. You probably heard this statement, sitting is the new smoking. I kind of laugh at myself when I'm at the computer all day and I'm like, how do I do physical therapy from a computer? You know, it's interesting. We're becoming less and less active as adults. Some physical activity is better than none. So you may write in a plan 2 times a week, walk a certain distance for a purpose. I'm going to go talk to somebody or I'm going to go get something out of the vending machine with whatever level of help. You might say, well, 2 times a week, it's a great place to start. Any bit helps. Adults who participate in any amount of physical activity gain some health benefits. And how much more is the mental for people we work with? Your world gets very isolating if you don't move, even if you are in the community. Oh, I like that one. I'll have to remember I said that. And then the second piece of research that I was drawing from was a meta-analysis where they actually take all the research that's been published, so it meets a certain level of criteria, and analyze that as a group to see what came out as being, oh, that's really strong evidence for supporting physical activity. And that's from the Office of Disease Prevention. So the meta-analysis falls into different levels, strong, major, and less. So you have to be at a pretty high level of research reinforcing what you're saying to be listed as a strong research evidence. But this is what it said: lower risk of early death, lower risk of coronary artery, lower risk of stroke, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes. How many people in our population are facing that change in their health of having type 2 diabetes now? Colon cancer and breast cancer. Still strong was a prevention of weight gain. That becomes a big issue when people are lifting and moving others and they have limited physical activity, and I enjoy eating desserts with my friends. That is a real challenge that we're facing. And the level of individuals that are close to 300 pounds now is much higher than there were in our programs, was much higher than it was 10, 15 years ago. It does help prevent falls, physical activity, reduction in depression, and better cognitive functioning for adults. And then the lower level or moderate is that exercises helps decrease your risk of hip fracture, decrease your risk of lung cancer, other types of cancer, It does increase bone density. I was kind of surprised. I thought that would be strong, but it was more of a moderate. It does improve sleep quality. And I did not see listed on there and hope to expect about the bowel and bladder function. I think we know it helps bowel and bladder function, but it wasn't actually listed on there. So the report from the Surgeon General, and these resources are listed in your handout. People with disabilities, less active to engage in regular moderate physical activity, generally have a less healthy they're generally less healthy than if you were to compare them to people without disabilities, which is not a shocker given everything we talked about. But yet they still have that same physical need for physical activity. We talked 5 to 10 minutes can make a difference. So as part of the day program, when can you think, where do we get 5 to 10 minutes? Stand up, help me clean the table. Help you clean the table? No, I sit in a wheelchair. You could stand, try that. Look in the mirror, we're gonna comb your hair. I've seen that done, people. So you like so-and-so, huh? Okay, well, let's walk over and visit them. You get 1 visit a day. So there's your 5-10 minutes of activity, and it makes your job more rewarding as well. It doesn't have to be real prescribed like that. If I don't exercise for 2 weeks and I'm swimming now because I'm aging with so I can't swim as long as I did before, or I can't lift as much weight as I did before. It doesn't impact me as much as a person with disability. So what this statement says is, if my level of fitness is barely able to get out of a chair, and another person's level of fitness is, my time went down on my 10K, the person with the lower level that can barely get out of the chair, if they lose that, it's huge in their quality of life. Whereas, your time changes on your run, it's not that big of a deal. So one of the biggest predictors of quality of life, it might sound funny, but in the literature, is your ability to get out of a chair. That is one of the biggest predictors for becoming assisted living or skilled care for adults. I didn't realize I had so many slides on this. And then kind of the other thing is, when people with disabilities, if you see somebody that has a special needs or a physical limitation that's at the gym, I can't help but kind of look over and say, good for you, keep going. Or you see it on Special Olympics on TV. It changes our perception of people. If you think about in any facility program that you've worked in, once you see so-and-so stand up, you're like, wow, I didn't know they were that tall. And you think of them as the man that they are or the woman that they are, different than somebody that uses the wheelchair all the time. So by keeping exercise for people with disabilities, we tend to improve a more positive perception of them. And if people have strong support from their family and friends, they tend to be more active. So again, underserved populations, we work with so many people who have very limited family support and very limited circle of friends. So even more important that we're involved in helping them to get active, because that's how it's going to happen. And I kind of smile because Bureau of Workers' Comp Brian showed a scale with balance, and that was just the image that we were thinking of as well. Safety and independence. Do I let them go to the bathroom by themselves? If they fall, it's a big deal, or are they ready? So it's always a balance. And what we're going to talk about next is with the adaptive equipment and the type of physical assistance that we try to balance that. We give them as much as they need, but not too much that they can't continue to grow. And with that, we move in steps. The highest step being independence. And as we lose skills, we might need hands-on assistance or actual physical assistance or total assistance. But our job is to match the type of supports that we provide to the level of need. So if someone's independent, our approach is to support them by maintaining a safe environment. Just like here, I've cluttered the place, now it looks like, our offices, it's got all this stuff. We need to keep a safe environment so nobody trips here. Then the different types of lifts, they did a great job showing how one lift was simple and it helped with the pivot part. The other one actually lifted the person off the ground if they needed it. So now Stephanie's going to talk about that independence and when you first start needing help level.